There we go.
Okay, can everyone see and hear now?
Yeah.
Much better.
Testing.
Oh,
Awesome. I can hear you too. That's awesome. How about that? Okay, guys. So I'll reiterate again because I'm not sure how much you guys missed. My email will be in the chat. So if any of you have any questions or you'd like one-on-one time with a banker or anything like that, please feel free to shoot me an email. It was Brandon, BRANDON _P_Lewis at keybank.com. Again, it's Brandon _P_Lewis at keybank.com. Okay. So guys, you might have missed this part, but we just talked about different identity thefts. So I asked for a show of hands in the room at, who had been affected by identity theft or unemployment fraud or a data breach, something like that. Pretty much by the end of the questions, we hit everyone in the room. So this affects everybody. There's some simple things we can do to protect ourselves. So that's kind of what we're going over today. Let's see, go to next. Oh. There we go. So let's talk, what is identity theft? Identity theft is any use of fraud to steal your information, essentially, for nefarious purposes, right? Usually people are stealing your info for money, right? That's, usually what people want is your money. Sometimes they're stealing your identity to use your good credit to get a product. Sometimes they're using your identity to funnel other people's money through. That's the other one that gets pretty nefarious is when they're using your accounts to funnel money for others. So, debit and credit card scams and how to avoid them. We're going to talk about signs of identity theft. How do you know if it's happening to you? What indicates a problem? Types of non-traditional fraud, taking action to prevent identity theft, and then how to deal with identity theft when it does happen. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so identity theft is a federal crime that occurs when an individual or group steals private data. Okay, we're talking social security number, credit card, financial account information to commit fraud for financial gain. Of course, online, mail, or through the phone are the most common forms. There's also the forms of, I had someone in my house, I had someone cleaning my house and they stole, they stole my information, or, grandma's got a helper that comes in and took her to the grocery store and wrote down her card number. That kind of stuff happens. Now, the big thing with local fraud, the good thing about if it happens close, right? They get caught close. The biggest problem with identity theft and fraud, though, is a lot of times it's someone in another country or another state. It's very hard to coordinate catching these people just because of the distance. So just keep that in mind too. Do you know who you're talking to? Are you aware of, is this someone local that I know? Debit and credit card scams. So there's usually a promise of lower interest rates. So how many of you have gotten a call that's like, hey, I can consolidate your debts and save you money, right? Used to be bigger than they are now. Or they'll say, credit repair companies, right? Oh, I'm this credit repair one, and we can put all your debts into one and charge you one low monthly fee to fix your credit, stuff like that. Just know that there are legitimate companies out there, but when you hire one of those companies, you're really at the mercy of how good that company is. So if you're hiring credit repair, if you're hiring, if you're looking at a debt consolidation, something like that, don't just answer the phone and go with the people that call you, right? You really want to make sure it's a client initiated action, right? Like I went to this company to do this, and then background check the company. Just because it's the first company that comes up on Google and it's highly rated doesn't mean it's a legitimate company. A lot of times those are fake and those are scams. I've seen that one a lot lately with the debt consolidation scams, where someone has gotten online, applied for a loan, and the company wasn't real. Okay. Overcharged and fraudulent purchases. So let's say, and this is the big one right now. This is so common, especially during Christmas. It was outrageous. You get a text message. Your package hasn't arrived. You get a text message. Your credit card was charged $5 million, right? Was this you? Yes or no? Okay. Banks legitimately do text their clients, and we will reach out if there is an odd transaction. Um, Scammers have caught on to that, and they will now also scam you, and um, they will say, "Hey, this charge is messed up. Give me your card number and let me look at the charge for you, so you can verify yes or no." Okay. Really, the only question you should ever be answering when the bank calls you is, "Yes, this was me," or "No, this was not me." We already have all your information. We are not going to be asking your social. We are not going to be asking your account number. We are not going to be asking for any digits off your debit card. That's just not going to happen when you talk to us. We're not going to ask your PIN number. So just know that, if any deeper questions than a yes or no are asked, or if you're being asked to provide any account information, let's say there is a legitimate issue, call your local branch or call your bank at the number on the back of your debit card. Okay. Don't just talk to someone over the phone who's calling you, because they really know how to make it look legitimate. Caller ID can be faked. That's the other thing, is it may ring in and it may say KeyBank on the phone, but just because it says KeyBank on the phone, it could be a fake caller ID. Request for charity assistance. Who here has heard how crazy AI is now? Okay. There's been a lot more of this lately where they call you and they get the voice of a family member. Okay. They can record a family member's voice, and AI can create a fake scenario, right? Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, I'm in jail. I'm in Texas. Please wire me $5,000 right now, because they're not going to let me out. Okay. This is a common one that's actually becoming more and more common. And it's creepy how they can take just a little snip of you and then make it sound like it's you. Um, Credit card skimming and e-skimming. This happens a lot. This happens a lot with uh, just here locally, where they'll put a reader on the machines, right? So you might go to the gas station and they'll put a reader on top of the reader that's at the gas station, or they'll put a reader on top of the ATM, right? So when you put your card through, they're scanning your card. That's what skimming is. So as you put your card in, that little machine that they put on top of our machine is going to scan your card, record all your information. Problem with that, right? They make it look like it belongs on the machine. They will make it look legitimate. Um, the real way that you can avoid that is just, and I'll tell you, I found two of them since I've been managing a bank. So, how you usually find them is if there's some kind of, it looks like duct tape or sticky residue around where you're putting your card into the machine. Or, if you pull on that, give whatever you're putting your card into a little pull. If it comes off real easy, it's either an old broken machine or it's probably a skimmer. Welcome, guys. Let you guys get seated here. They heard there's cookies.
Yeah, yes.
So have any of those happened to any of you guys? What happened to you, Joe?
I get text messages often saying a package has not been delivered, or please call this number.
Yep.
This charge has been overspent, send funds to reimburse, things like that.
Yeah, and how many of us are always waiting on a package from Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Like always, right? If it's me, and like my credit card bill's pretty rough, but it happens. So I think that that's one that gets a lot of people right now, is the package scam, where they're saying, "Hey, your package not here." Oh, okay. Well, let me look it up for you. What's your debit card number, right? Second anyone asks for bank information, that's where you stop and make sure it's really the bank. Request for charity assistance. Here's another thing with charities. How many of us have experience donating to like United Way and stuff, right? Like, I think most companies have great programs where they can give to United Way or give to a charitable organization. Here's the thing that happens with charities. And I'll tell you a little story about, just making sure you're verifying the charities that your money's going to. My, at the time, little 94-year-old grandma, okay, very smart lady. She was 94 years old. She ran the books for her church. She's pretty sharp, right? She had been running the books for her church for, 70 years, something like that, right? Pretty sharp lady, but she would get, she was a very generous lady. Didn't have a lot of money, but people would mail her all the time. Please donate to this cause, please donate to that cause. So, you know, she didn't have a lot of money, but she'd say, okay, I'll give this one $2.50 a month. I'll give this one $5 a month. I'll give this one $3 a month. Okay, by the time we found out about it, she was giving away a lot of money. It was like a couple $100 a month. We look up these charities. None of them were reputable. Okay. They were sending her something in the mail. They were calling her. None of these were reputable, legitimate charities. And I will tell you, do your research on charities because it's shocking. Some of them that you think are very legitimate are not. So that's another one that happens to a lot of elderly people is, you know, they get a lot of mailers, things like that. And then, you know, you want to help. So just be cautious of that. Next, we're going to talk about debit and credit card scams. Okay. Do not share your debit or credit card information with unsolicited callers or anyone offering quick cash as part of a contest or giveaway. Okay. If they are a prince, do not take their money.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a lie. There are no princes, you know, you should never send any money to, you know, anyone that's saying, hey, I'm stuck in this country. I'm trying to get this money moved. I'm trying to, you know, you won $1 million, pay the taxes on it. You can have it. No. Okay. It just doesn't happen. I'm sorry. If you can't win a lottery, you didn't play. Sorry. Let's just put it that way. Know that third party entities do not negotiate lower credit card interest rates. Okay. There are debt consolidation companies out there. But just know that it's usually a scam, right? So just be very careful anytime you're doing a debt consolidation or any kind of credit repair that you're very careful about researching the company that you do that with. Always vet your charitable organizations prior to donating your money, right? We talked about why, right? Pay for transactions using the tap feature or your smartphone app, okay? Here's another big one. Do not open an account in your name for another person to use, okay? This includes handing someone your debit card, okay? I very commonly see, I gave my son, I gave my daughter, I gave my niece, whatever, my debit card, okay? Niece is supposed to go buy groceries, they buy a bunch of alcohol, whatever, right? Okay, this happens all the time. And I will tell you, the unfortunate thing about that is that is technically not fraud in the bank size. If you give your account and you give your information and you give authorization to use that card, they have permission to use that card, right? With those, it's kind of hit or miss whether we can get you that money back because technically you gave your card to someone else to use, they used it, you know, I can't control how they used it. So be very careful giving your debit card away. Also, never open an account for somebody else. Always know if your name's attached to it, you're responsible for it, okay? The bank size, if you're on it, you're on it, okay? Keep an eye out for card readers that look tampered with, right? We talked about that. Is there sticky stuff all over the card reader? Is there, you know, did the front of it fall off when I pulled on it a little bit? Stuff like that. Now, I'm not telling you to go damage somebody's card reader, like, you know, be careful, but definitely bring it to the attention of the staff at whatever location you're at if you see it. It does happen. It happens locally. I've seen it happen on a lot of ATMs. So just be careful when you put your card in. You know, if something looks off, just report it. And monitor your account regularly, okay? Biggest thing is you are not responsible for any electronic fraud that occurs on your account. You just have a duty to notify the bank right away. Right? So the quicker you identify it, the quicker it stops. Okay. So here's some signs of identity theft, okay? Unexplained transactions on your account statement, okay? If you don't know what it is, if it's charging you too much, if there's an issue with it, let your bank know, okay? Even if you're unsure, like you're like, it might be me, it might be something I've signed up for, but I'm not sure. We can actually do a dispute for additional information and find out what that charge is for you. Don't just let it go because it's a small amount or whatever. The other one you really want to look out for as far as unusual transactions is if you see like two amounts, like 50 cents and 80 cents that are deposited. Okay, so who can tell me why that's an issue? If I see like little deposits.
They're just starting.
Yep, they're just starting. That's part of it. Yep,
There's getting things moving for the big ones.
you got it. They're about to transfer money. So way that banks verify that you transfer your money from account to account. A lot of times how a bank will verify that money is we'll do two deposits. So it might be like, it'll usually equal up to $1 or $2. So it might be, $1.50 and 50 cents. Okay, so they'll tell them, hey, we're gonna deposit $2 in your account. You need to tell us the amounts. So the client tells them, okay, you deposited $1.50 and 50 cents. They'll be like, okay, that's correct. That verifies the amount or the account for us. So if you see that, if you see two little credits, a lot of times somebody is trying to gain access to your information to be able to transfer in and out of that account. You see unfamiliar and unauthorized activity on your credit report. How many of you in the room check your credit report? How do you check your credit? Through your bank. Perfect. Who else? Anyone else have a different way they check their credit? Do it through the bank? Yeah.
Credit card.
Yeah, a lot of credit cards come with free credit monitoring. Go ahead.
Kind of a different topic, but these companies that like you see them advertising like LifeLock, and are those, I mean, legitimate? I've never used one, but what are your thoughts on having a company check these? I don't know how that works, but what are your thoughts?
So I've gone back and forth. Banks have offered identity theft protection in the past. It's not something we currently offer, but it's something we have in the past. So it is legitimate. It does help. The reality is that you can kind of keep a good eye on your credit as is. Now, LifeLock goes that extra step above and they give you some insurance. They'll say up to $1 million, right? We'll cover you, things like that. So a lot of those are legitimate, and we'll talk about that a little bit more into it too. But yeah, are they legitimate? Like the big ones like LifeLock? Yeah, they are. There's a cost to them, and there's some free things that you can do also. So how many of you have been on annualcreditreport.com? Common sense. And easy to do, right?
Yeah, you get all three, which is
Yep.
nice because sometimes it's not reported to all three bureaus. Experian, TransUnion. I was sharing
Got
a
it.
story actually this morning. I was in just the billing college and went to collections.
Yep.
And it was like $100, but two of my scores looked great. And then when we went to get our first mortgage, they're like, your credit's horrible.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? Like you're in collections from this
Oh, no.
$100 bill or whatever. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
Yeah. And again, those things pop up on there. I will say annualcreditreport.com. Either pull it annually or pull it every 2 years. Okay. Regardless of if you have Credit Karma, which another good one's Credit Karma, right? It's free. You can see it at any time. And if accounts do pop up that aren't you, you can very quickly notify the banks, notify the credit bureaus, hey, that's not me. The quicker you do that, the better, right? So I would say good rule of thumb, check whatever credit monitoring service you have at least once a month. Pull that full report at least once a year, if not every 2 years. Thomas is absolutely right. There will be more on that annualcreditreport.com than there is on any of those monitoring services. There just is, because some banks only report to that one bureau. Some collection agencies will only show up on that one bureau. So you might have a perfect score on one bureau and your score may be terrible on another because you're reported for collections for something silly, right? I can't even tell you how many clients have had that they have an AT&T bill that they're not paying out of principal and it's $30 and it's in collections and it's really damaging their credit. So I'm like, I get that the principal, but sometimes you just got to pay that $30 because you want to buy a house, so stuff like that. The other thing is you may not know that it's on there, right? Medical bills, there's all kinds of stuff that pops up that people don't know about. And sometimes all it takes is disputing it for it to fall off, right? A lot of times it is a genuine error and it will come off when you dispute it. So definitely that's another great way to monitor your credit. Let's see here. Bills are missing or you receive unfamiliar bills. Okay. You know, if you got a bill for a service you didn't sign up for, that's a pretty big red flag. Don't just throw that away. That's, you know, someone has used your name to sign up for something, right? Your medical bill doesn't add up or your medical claim is denied. So that's a pretty common one, especially, you know, if you're on Medicare, Medicaid. That fraud is real. That happens a lot. So a lot of times it's someone's gotten a hold of your info and they're using it for medical benefits. So, which I found they can even buy stuff on there. Like there's accounts through Medicare, Medicaid where they can buy different things, get cash assistance, stuff like that in your name, and you may know nothing about it. You're unable to file taxes because someone has already filed a tax return. That one's terrifying. That one happens, right? I've had a few clients that's happened to. It is all resolvable, you know, it is always resolvable. So just keep that in mind. But again, red flag if you can't file your taxes or if it says, hey, your taxes have already been filed. That's why in Ohio, especially, there's the new PIN numbers, is because that happened. So they'll send you a PIN number to file every year. Or you've been notified that your information was exposed into data breach. Just show of hands, how many of us is that? Oh my gosh, everybody, right? Whether it's your insurance company, it's, you know, it's Target, Walmart, wherever you spend your money, it's happened. Let's talk about some non-traditional fraud, okay? So, unsolicited healthcare and Medicare fraud. Just talked about that one. Cryptocurrency fraud. How many of you have seen Elon Musk talk about he's launching cryptocurrency? I have seen it everywhere, all over TikTok. It almost got me once on YouTube. They have taken AI and made Elon Musk talk about cryptocurrency. I will tell you, he does not have a cryptocurrency giveaway. It does not happen. Again, be very careful with this stuff. They will use, I don't know if it's AI. I don't know if it's they've spliced together different interviews that he's done. But they will make it look legitimate. I mean, they will really have like these A-list people talking about something online that doesn't really exist. So just be careful with that. Also, if you're not in the, you know, if you're not super familiar with crypto, please don't buy it. Okay. Unless you really know what you're talking about, please don't buy it because it's probably a scam. I get that a lot where people are investing thinking it's crypto. And a lot of times it's some illegitimate company that claims to be crypto, but is not. Okay. Another big one I see here in Grove City, I see this all the time, work from home fraud. You have an interview, let's say you go to an interview, you have a really good meeting, the HR person's awesome. They say, hey, you're great for this job. I'm gonna send you a check so you can go get a laptop and you can get the printer that you need. Okay. How many of you have heard of that one? Yeah. I've seen a lot of people get caught in that, right? They interview for a job online, might even be posted on LinkedIn, whatever. You know, they send out a check, they say, go get your laptop, go pick out your laptop. You know, the check clears, put the check in the bank, it clears, no problem. I go get my stuff. They say, okay, we sent you a little bit more than we were supposed to. Go ahead and wire us $200 back. Okay, what do you think happens to that check that you deposited? It's going to bounce. Yep. Who can tell me how fast a check bounces after you deposit it? Typically 3 days. That is typical. So 7 to 10 business days later, a check can come back bad. Okay. It can literally come back bad at any time. That's in general, though, within 7 to 10 business days, it's going to come back. Keep in mind, sometimes these checks are legitimate that they're using. They're legitimate checks that they stole, and no one knows it's fake until the account owner says that's fake, right? The bank may not know it's fake yet. So that's one thing. With how check clearing works is if I take this cashier's check and I put it in my bank, just because I got credit for it the next day does not mean that that check cleared. You getting credit has nothing to do with whether or not the check is cleared. The bank will, especially if you're a longtime client, you have good accounts, we will front you the credit early. Okay, that does not mean that that check is good. Again, 7 to 10 business days for it to come back. Now, what this scam is they'll send you that check. The bank thinks it's good. It'll be good for a while. You go buy your laptop, you go buy your printer, you mail them a check back, or you send them a wire, you get them a gift card, whatever. It turns out that that was a bad check. You now owe the bank for the money that the bad check was, right? I can tell you almost in every case, if you get a cashier's check in the mail and it isn't a FedEx envelope, it's usually fraud. To the point that anytime a client walks in with a FedEx envelope, we're all taking bets on what type of fraud it was. Okay. Literally, no one's mailing checks in FedEx envelopes. I mean, unless you already know about it and why it's coming, it's a scam. I'll tell you that. Everyone I know has almost gotten suckered with those though, because sometimes they're so convincing. They'll write a really good letter. They'll put your name in it, you know. The check will be made out perfectly. It'll be a valid cashier's check from a valid bank with a valid account number. I mean, it gets really sophisticated. That being said, social media and phone fraud, okay, this is another big one, okay? If you have not met somebody in person more than once, okay? It could be a scammer, okay? Social media and phone fraud, especially, you know, they're targeting the elderly more than anyone else, right? I'll tell you guys a really sad story, about what we call sweetheart scandal. I had a client, she was in her 70s, okay? She wired $7,000 to her boyfriend, okay? So who can tell me what happens when you wire money to somebody? Is there a way to get it back? Does anyone know? Like handing somebody cash, it can disappear that day. Sometimes we can pull it back if we're quick. Most of the time, by the time I go to pull it back, they're walking out of that bank with that money. Okay. Big problem with wire fraud is it's instant and it's not recoverable in most cases. And you do sign a waiver when you send a wire saying, hey, I know this is the account number I want to send it to, and I know who I'm sending it to, and this is what I want to do. So in this case, I had a client, you know, in her 70s. She wired $7,000 to this guy. She swore up and down she knew him. She knew all the right things to tell the banker, right? Oh, I knew who he was. I talked to him. I've been dating him 2 years, blah, blah, blah. I've met him, this, that, and the other. Okay, well, she comes in to do another 7,000. We finally convince her, hey, this is fraud. This is not a real person. No one would ask you to do this. This client told me, you know what, Brandon? She said, I am just in shock that this happened to me. I said, well, how did you meet this guy? Well, on Facebook. Okay, well, how did you meet him on Facebook? Well, he was friends with my friends, and he's been friends with my friends for years and telling jokes on Facebook. And I thought he was really funny. And he posted on Facebook that his wife died recently and my husband had just died, and he reached out to me. And then we talked every day on the phone for an hour, every single day for over a year before he asked me for a dime. So think about the level that they'll go to, right? To him though, I mean, he's probably sitting at a desk with 50 old ladies, you know, on his blackboard, you know. If he gets 2 or 3 of those a year, he's probably set, right? So just think of the levels that they'll go to and the social engineering that they'll do. That's one that we commonly see though, and it's the saddest one because you're breaking somebody's heart. It's really terrible. Unemployment tax fraud. Unemployment. I've had someone try to file unemployment in my name every year for the last 3 years since COVID. So anyone else in here? I know I saw a couple hands. Yeah.
Especially for Ohio, the opportunity services, we get notifications, and so if someone files an active employee, we'll reach out to them and say, hey, did you file this with a mistake? And then we give you the steps we need to take to put that as fraudulent, and then we also take steps internally to put that as fraudulent on behalf of the employer. So we have a really good process in HR, so if you would ever know if it would come to us, we will contact you within 24 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, same thing. My employer's been really good about that. Little more scary if it happens and you don't have a great employer with a great process, right? So hopefully, you know, you get your notification, you know, and they're like, hey, you're still working here, right? Yeah. But like I say, that's getting really out of hand too. I've seen a lot of that. That one, like I say, typically your employer takes care of it for you. So it's usually not too awful bad, but just something to watch out for. Right. All right, so here's some actions you can take to prevent identity theft, okay? On your credit report, we talked about checking Credit Karma, checking your annualcreditreport.com, right? Both great ways. Enroll in some kind of fraud protection, to your point, right? You've got LifeLock, you've got a lot of, there are a lot of good reputable, identity theft protection companies. Here's another one I will tell you about through insurance companies. You can actually ask your insurance agent. A lot of companies do offer through your homeowner's policy or through your renter's policy, some fraud protection. So you can talk to them about that. There is, I forget what the name of the policies are, but they are generally pretty reasonable. I have had clients use those policies when they have been scammed and they have paid out. So I can tell you I've seen that. Definitely something to bring up with your insurance agent. Just make sure it's a reputable insurance agent. Using a password manager, right, will help you generate your complex passwords. Apple has a great one, right? I use. So you want to avoid keeping the same password for every little thing in your life. Keep in mind, not every company has the same level of security. So if you're using the same password for everybody, it only takes one to leak it, right? And enroll in credit monitoring service. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Adding alerts to your accounts. So through key.com, if you bank at Key, you can very easily set alerts, right? If a transaction larger than $100 shows up, send me a text message. Definitely have alerts on your accounts. If you have an overdraft, if you have a large transfer, things like that. Sometimes it's just texting your phone. As long as you let the bank know right away, we can fix it. Minimizing your solicitation mail for credit offers to your home. That's one of those things that, you know, every financial institution does it, every credit card does it. They send you offers to your house, right? That makes it very easy for someone to snag that and fill out an application. So there is a website on the link there, or well, I guess it doesn't give you the website, but just go to irs.gov and there is a way to limit those where you can block your solicitation offers, especially if you're not sure on your mail. If your mail's been stolen in the past, might be a good thing to do. So let's talk about what happens if it does happen, right? Step one, contact your bank, creditors, freeze your accounts, right? If that account is compromised, better to freeze it. And, you know, I promise if it's a bill, you can work it out. It will be okay if it's not paid today. They will understand. You can pay it a different way, different day. Okay. The biggest thing is if you notice that your account is breached, you freeze that account. So call right away. Anyone know where to find the number for your bank at all times? Anyone know? Real quick and easy. Back of your card. Always call the number on the back of your card. Again, if it's some kind of social engineering scam, if it's something where they're trying to say, hey, your debit card, you know, your debit card has an issue, your account was compromised, something like that, and they're calling you over the phone, you can always call that number on your debit card back. Do not just Google what's my bank's customer service number, okay? Who could tell me why? You know why? Scams, yeah. So very commonly, right? You type in, you know, name a bank, right? ABC Bank into Google, okay? Sometimes the top result will be a scammer. The top result will be a fake website that's made to look like our website and they'll give you a fake number, okay? I'll tell you another one that's very common. What's the virus software? Norton or McAfee or whatever. They will have, they'll have their 800 number is a very common scam. So if you just Google McAfee or whatever, my computer's having an issue, a lot of times the first number that comes up will be a scam phone number. And you're now talking to a scammer who's going to take over your computer. Okay. So make sure that it's a real number you're calling and make sure that it's you're initiating the phone call. You're giving bank information. If you are nervous about it, come in person. Okay. Hopefully you bank at a place that is local that you can walk into. Number two is file a report with law enforcement. So for a lot of types of fraud, you do have to file a report with law enforcement because again, if you're asking the bank to take a loss on it, if you're asking someone to, you know, stop the fraud, a lot of times there does need to be a police report, especially with that local fraud, because you want to make sure these people are caught. 3 is contact the reporting agencies. Okay, we have all 3 numbers on here. You generally only have to contact one and they will be able to block all 3. So generally, if there is an issue and you need to block your credit, you can call one of these numbers and they can call, usually they'll block all three for you. 4 is change your password in 10 numbers. Who can tell me what the most important password that usually gets hacked is? What's the first password they usually hack? Anyone know?
Email.
Got it.
Got it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Email is the first thing that they'll usually hack. And the reason being, if I know your email, what can I do? Right? I can
Yeah.
reset your other passwords, right? So really big deal. The first thing I say if you have fraud is change those passwords, okay? Especially your email. The other thing is a lot of people have a legacy email password that's really easy because they've had it for 100 years and never had an issue, right? So your email password is important. It's important to change it right away. Here's the other thing. If you ever have a situation where fraud is going on, especially if your computer or your cell phone has been taken over, you don't want to just change your password on the device that they've taken over. Okay, you're going to want to get your device cleaned and then change your password. I've had that happen where a client, has went to change their passwords and then guess what? They saw where they changed the password and they got right back in. So that's another big one. And again, I always tell people anything financial, try to make a unique password for that. Don't use the same one as what your email is or, your Netflix account. It needs to be a little bit higher level security. We're talking about your money, right? Now let's talk just real briefly about how KeyBank protects you. We do use some industry leading cybersecurity tools. I will tell you, I spoke with Chris Gorman, who's CEO of KeyBank. It's been a few months. He was in town. I want to say can't even remember what month he was, but it was at some point last year. He was in town and we had a discussion. He talked about our cybersecurity budget. It's basically unlimited and we go over every year. So it's a huge amount of money that the bank spends to prevent cybersecurity fraud. I thought it was very interesting in the conversation with him. He discussed, if Russia came here and marched down Broad Street with the Red Army, like we'd get some government resources to prevent that, right? Well, there's a cybersecurity army, right? A lot of these countries are using hackers to come after banks and hospitals, things like that, right? That's on our budget, right? We have to defend against that. We have to have really good systems in place. And it was a very interesting conversation about that, just because when you really see how much money banks are putting into making sure that your accounts stay safe, it just is mind blowing. And the other thing is, it's just a weird world we're living in. It really is. But the big thing with cybersecurity is make sure that you're using a reputable company. A lot of companies don't have that budget. They don't have that ability to have that kind of protection. So just make sure you're doing business with reputable companies that you don't have to worry about your data. Multi-factor identification processes, cyber defense center, right? All that stuff. How many of you have been locked out of your online banking and it's been terrible? Yeah. Sometimes we make you come into the branch, right? This is why. We want to make sure it's really you, right? So just do try to remember when it is a pain in the butt that it's for a good reason, right? And we take every precaution. I'd rather you be upset with me than for us to give the wrong person access to your information. Okay. Who can tell me, like, if you have fraud on your debit card, who's had a debit card fraud dispute? Debit or credit card? Okay. How long did it take you to get your money back?
Credit card.
What?
Debit.
Yep,
It was
perfect.
bad.
Perfect, pretty quick and easy, right? So there are some guidelines that all banks must follow in regards to debit card fraud. There's a regulation called Regulation E. Okay, Regulation E says that if there is debit card fraud that is reported to us, we have 10 business days to issue a provisional credit. Okay, not calendar days, business days. So we have up to 10 days to give you provisional credit for those items. If we are going to approve the claim, we have 45 to 90 days to solve that claim of fraud. Okay, so let's say, you report fraud. is $300. Okay, the bank has 10 business days to think, do we believe this claim? Do we think this is a good claim? Okay. If they're leaning towards, hey, we're gonna approve this claim, they must provide credit within that 10th business day, okay? The reporting time starts from the time you make the dispute on the card, not from the time the transaction is made, from the time that you report it, okay? Who can tell me how long you have to report a transaction was fraudulent? Anyone know? Any guesses? What'd you say?
24 hours?
24 hours? Nope, it's longer than that. So this is, how fast do you have to recognize the fraud to report it to the bank?
30
So-
days?
Close. 60 days. So 60 days from your statement, okay? The day we mail your statement, you have, starts the clock. You have 60 days to let us know if that charge is fraudulent. In the real world, I will say banks are very nice about it, right? If you don't see it, if whatever, a lot of times we will still pay that claim. But the law says we have 60 days. Okay, so Reg E says we have 60 days to report. So you want to make sure you notify the bank as soon as possible if something is wrong. Okay. Check your statements, look on them, right? Not only may you be paying for 2 gym memberships and you should only be paying for 1, stuff like that. Very important to just go through your statement every once in a while, make sure that there's not anything on there that's suspicious or odd. The other thing with reporting your fraud, who can tell me what the time frame is on checks fraud? So you've mailed a check, the check got stolen, someone else has cashed it. You wrote it to the electric company and Joe Smith cashed your check. Who can tell me the time frame on getting your money back on that? Good guess. Anyone know? Who's liable for that fraud? So I have stolen your check and I've gone to another bank to cash it. Who pays for that fraud? Say it again.
The people who passed it.
You got it. Got it. That's who's on the hook for that. So there's not a regulation on time frame for that one. If you are still paying bills through checks in the mail, please find a better way. If your checks are stolen and someone cashes a check, the bank or institution that pays the check, that cashes it out for the fraudulent client is the one liable for it. Now, where that becomes a big issue, and this is getting very common that this is happening, is the paying bank doesn't want to pay it. Okay. So I had one client, for example, he had a check he wrote out it was for a business. He wrote it out for a bill. Someone washed the check, cashed the check, $8,000. Okay, $8,000 he was out. It took 6 months to get that back. Okay. So what happens in that process is we send affidavits. So he claims it on our end, right? So he comes to KeyBank, he says, hey, this is fraud. This is what wasn't me. Okay, so we go to the other bank and we say, hey, you need to pay this back. This is fraud. We send them paperwork. They send it back and they're like, oh, you missed a comma here. XYZ issue on the paperwork. Okay, so we revise the paperwork. We send it back. Goes to their department, sits on somebody's desk for a month. Okay, you missed this. They send it back, right? It can get caught in paperwork drama for a bit. The other thing is I've also seen where banks just don't want to pay it for whatever reason. We've had to step up to the level of we send them a demand letter. You must pay this client their money back before they send that money back. So in the case of that client, it was one of those that was more extreme. The bank didn't want to take the loss on it. Took him 6 months to get his money back. So that being said, with the debit card transaction, you're insured, you're guaranteed, right? If something bad happens, you get your money back quickly within 10 days. Something that's on check, something that's not electronic, that's a higher risk of it taking a longer time to get your money back. Generally, you do get your money back, but it takes a while. That being said, I always tell clients, the best thing you can pay your bills with is usually a credit card. Because if it gets stolen, guess whose money it is? It's our money, right? So you still have the money in your checking account to live off while we're researching it. Because even on the debit card side, 10 business days can be a long time, right? That's a long time to not have funds, right? You have bills every day. So just a couple, kind of interesting things on how to prevent from fraud. Who has questions? Yes, sir.
Just for a moment about mortgage and title fraud. It's kind of a thing. House paid for and all of a sudden one day you get a bill saying your mortgage is due.
So we've both seen that infomercial in the middle of the night, right? So that's been a big one. I've seen a lot of infomercials on. Title fraud does happen. There is a paper trail though. I don't think it's as common as what it's made out to be. I think a lot of times they're trying to sell you protection, right? Yeah, they're trying to sell you that with fraud, with title fraud. I will tell you, if you have any kind of loan against your property, it's very unlikely because they'd have to do title work. I have seen where clients have had liens on their home that didn't belong to them. When they go to refinance or something like, hey, this contractor that did the siding for the neighbor's house accidentally put it on a lien on your house instead of the neighbor's house. That stuff happens. There's typically a not me affidavit that goes in when you refinance the home. Because essentially, if there's some kind of title fraud, it's usually you find out when you're doing a loan, right? Is usually when you're gonna find out, or when you go to sell the house, you'll be like, what's this thing that doesn't belong here? Usually it's not enforceable if it's something weird. I do always recommend though, if you purchase a property, always buy the title insurance. Because title insurance protects you against things that you don't know are on the title. It's very cheap. It's very good to buy if you're ever purchasing a property. But for those, I'll be honest, I've not seen very much of it. So any other questions? Broadways. All right, anyone online have any questions, Thomas?
I'm reaching out. No,
Okay.
I haven't seen any in the chat.
I know we talked about a lot, so, again, guys, thanks for bearing with me on this. This was our first one, but there will be, of course, different topics throughout the year. So if you guys have feedback on what you'd like to hear, what went well, what you liked, what you didn't, please email me. I'm very open to feedback.
Brandon, can I have just a quick
Yeah,
comment?
absolutely.
I didn't get to introduce myself at the beginning, but my name is Josh Helper. I'm also with Brandon KeyBank. Brandon helps with the employees of our customers, where I focus a lot on fraud protection and banking for companies like COSO. One thing I wanted to point out, you touched on it on the multi-factor ID. Really, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. That's kind of the summary of all this, right? Especially if it's something to your benefit. The other reason that they're working so hard to try to engage you is because if you're complicit and you give all those bank details out and they are able to wire your funds, well, now that's on you. That's not on the bank's protection, right? And so if you think through this, that's why they're working so hard for you to give up a password or an account number, or even like the 6-digit code that they text to your phone, right? So we didn't talk too much about that, but 2-factor authentication, I would encourage you to put on everything, because I hope you take Brandon's advice, but I'd be lying to you if I said every one of my passwords was different for everything. But where that really helps, when you sign up and you add your cell phone, and they say, okay, you typed in and you haven't logged in there in 30 days, so we're gonna send you a text message with the 6-digit code you gotta type in. Nobody will ever ask you for that, right? So if they know, hey, I know you have an account at KeyBank, I know what your email is, I have been able to reset to push it to you, and now I know your cell phone because it's out there in public domain. I'm gonna call you, yeah, I just sent you this code, please give me that code. You can bet that they're on the other end on KeyBank with your login ID, getting ready to type that code in to do it, right? And that's shifted on you. So that's just as important as a social security number or date of birth. No one's calling to grab that. And a lot of times if you see it, they'll be pushing you that information. Banks won't ask you for that code. Once again, if you start to get those on your phone, I would call the number on the back of your card or something that looks or feels of a number or go into your local branch or institution, because that 2-factor can save you a lot. And it's been in the news. I don't know if anybody saw, but a couple weeks ago, the SEC put out a tweet saying Bitcoin ETFs are now live. And they hadn't approved those, but the price of Bitcoin spiked, and I think a lot of people sold and got out of Bitcoin, because what happened is the phone number that the SEC had tied to their Twitter account did not have 2-factor authentication. So these spoofers could buy Bitcoin, use that message to say, we've approved it. Everybody says, okay, we're going to be able to transact more. When in fact, they had to then say, sorry, that wasn't us. We actually got our Twitter account hacked as the SEC, right? So that was all because they didn't have a 2-factor authentication on their Twitter account. So I would make sure you focus on that. I would always sign up for that. Make sure that's a number, right? You can either call and they give you a voice message or a text. Sometimes maybe if you have a past employer's phone number on there, that was your office line or a direct line there, you just want to make sure that you're updating those. but that two factor is just as important. Because if you think about it, how much of your life are you putting out there? And maybe it's not you, maybe you don't have a Facebook account, but your daughter does or your wife does. And they call you up and say, hey, we saw that you, through LinkedIn, we have your direct deposit from Toso. We saw that you 2 weeks ago made an account at, you swiped your credit card in Florida. We saw you were vacationing there. And we know that you're in Ohio, so we saw a gas station near you because your public address is available, right? They can feel like, okay, yeah, they know 2 or 3 transactions I probably made this month. So now I'm going to trust them. No one's ever going to blame you if you pause for a second and say, I'm going to be a day late making this payment to make sure that I'm comfortable with it or getting there, right? We're all going to be understanding. So in all of those instances, don't rush. Don't let that intimidation factor be there. Take your time, make sure it's accurate and do that appropriately.
Yeah, and always take the time, like the second that call feels uncomfortable, or they start asking for personal information, call your bank, right? It's probably not the bank. Definitely call the bank and we can verify, hey, yes, we were trying to call you for X, Y, Z. One other thing, so that is definitely a good point. If you start getting a bunch of codes and it's like your authentication code is this, that's a good alert to like maybe check your stuff. The other thing I want to bring up, I talked a lot about elderly scams. It's so common. If you are that person in someone elderly's life that, that you're their backup, like if you know that no one else is watching out for them, talk to them about that, right? Hey, can I get on your, can I start looking at your statement with you? Can I be on your bank account? That kind of thing, can I help you with this, right? Keep an eye out for that, because I will tell you, I've had clients that they're fine. And then all of a sudden something changes and they start, they get that little hint of dementia and they start believing everything they're told. And then $100,000 is gone, before you know it, because they've signed up for every scam in the book, right? At the bank, we try to prevent that as much as we possibly can, but we can't always save people from themselves. So, just make sure that you do keep an eye on family members and people you think might be vulnerable and educate them on that, right? Don't give your stuff over the phone. If you ever have an issue, call me, I'll call the bank for you, make sure that you put yourself between them.
And there are ways, in my last thing, there are ways, we talked about the credit agencies reporting after a fraud event has occurred. You can also go down the path where you can kind of freeze and say, hey, I intend not to open up any new accounts, right? So you can kind of freeze somebody, like if there's elderly people in my life that we've just done that. Right now, it is going to be extra work if you find yourself needing to open one to get that unfrozen and there's extra steps. But if you'd rather take the approach, hey, I have the mortgage I'm always going to have, I have the checking and the credit card I'm always going to have, I don't have any car loans anymore. I want it to be a hassle to open up a new account, but I'm going to get the fraud protection. That's not going to be easy for someone to do it without my participation. You can go out there and contact those agencies to put a hold on those accounts, so that it requires a lot more work than to just somebody having your date of birth and your social to go into a place and fraudulently open up an account. So that's something to think about, especially with those, that are near to you, that are later in life, that maybe, you don't think they're going to be buying a bunch of cars for another house or opening up a bunch of accounts. There are options to kind of put more of a blanket protection on versus making it easy up front and catching that later. So that's just another thing to explore, to think about the people in your life or your own situation, right? You might say, hey, it'd be a lot easier and I'm willing to go through a couple extra hoops to open up another account, knowing I can sleep easier every night. That is going to be really tough for someone to be able to go and open up a new loan or a new checking account or credit card.
Yeah. So, guys, thank you so much for your attention today. Like I say, this is the first one. So thank you for your grace. Thank you for dealing with me. Again, if you have feedback or anything you'd like to hear in the future, let me know. This QR code, feel free to scan this with your phone. It is your unique KeyBank link here at Toso. I have a paper copy if anyone wants to scan it. You can schedule appointments with us through this. Also feel free to shoot me an email. Couple quick things on the benefit side that you guys get with us. There is, if you do not already bank with Key, you can sign up with Key. There is a promo offer for you guys to get a couple $100 for signing up with Key and having your direct deposit from Toso. So feel free to check that out. If you want any more information, just hop on there, and schedule an appointment with one of us. So I appreciate it, guys.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
music frozen.
Everyone going to freeze their credits.